The sound fills the cold consulting room, cutting through the smell of carbolic acid and wax. It is the sound of polished mahogany and humming brass gears. London, 1888. A physician adjusts the steam-powered device. This is not a factory, this is a clinic, and this is medicine. In the late Victorian era, doctors prescribed orgasms as a medical treatment for women. They diagnosed a phantom illness, hysteria, a term that covered anxiety, insomnia, irritability, and simple defiance. The supposed cure was pelvic massage, a clinical procedure delivered on a cold leather chaise. The physician's tool, a gleaming brass and ivory mechanism, promised relief. It promised a cure. But why was this the treatment? And what was the true, unspoken nature of the disease? A cure delivered by a cold, humming machine is not a cure. It is an answer to a different question. If you enjoy these dark histories, leave a like and subscribe and comment below where you're listening from. And now, back to the story. The diagnosis was the first act of captivity. It began not in a stone dungeon, but in the cold, wax-polished quiet of a Harley Street consulting room, or the gray, echoing wards of the Salpêtrière in Paris under Dr. Charcot. The patient was not seized by guards. She was examined by a physician. She was measured, and she was labeled hysteria. The word itself was a cage, derived from the Greek hystera, meaning uterus. The ancients believed the womb wandered the body, a starved animal causing chaos. By the 19th century, the theory was more sophisticated, a disorder of the nerves, but the prejudice remained carved in stone. The diagnosis was a mark, an institutional renaming. It reframed a woman's personality as pathology. Grief became melancholia. Intelligence became overstimulation. Trauma, boredom, or frustration became a malfunction of the flesh. A woman who argued, a woman who read unsuitable novels, a woman who refused a husband, all were candidates for the label. The institution was not a prison of iron bars, but one of paper, authority, and medical consensus. Once diagnosed, the woman entered the system. Her intake forms were filed. Her complaints were transcribed into cold ledgers, the ink drying black. She was no longer a person. She was a case study, a name on a brass plate outside a private door, a body on an examination table. Her words were not testimony. They were symptoms to be recorded. In Paris, physicians displayed their hysterics in public lectures, demonstrating their seizures and paralyses to amphitheaters filled with men. The women became living exhibits, their bodies belonging not to themselves, but to the narrative of the disease. But there is a quiet will to resist. It is not found in grand speeches. It is found in the margins of case files, in the brief, dismissive notes of the physician. A patient who refused to perform her symptoms on cue. A woman who met the doctor's probing gaze with cold, clear eyes. A patient who simply fell silent, refusing to supply the words that would condemn her. But how does one fight an enemy who wears the mask of a healer? This resistance, however, was often futile. It was merely interpreted as another symptom of the same sickness, defiance, or a morbid state. And so, the system offered its mercy. It was not a violent subjugation, it was a treatment. It was offered with the cool, paternal confidence of scientific progress. A clinical application, a pelvic massage, designed to induce the hysterical paroxysm. This, the doctors claimed, was the only way to release the toxic, built-up nervous tension, to restore balance to the overwrought female system. The price for this mechanical mercy was simple: acceptance. The patient had to accept that her mind, her feelings, her very identity were sick. She had to concede that the doctor, with his cold hands or colder machines, knew her body better than she did. The cure was always temporary. The tension always returned. The appointments continued. Week after week, the fees paid, the brass and ivory machine humming its steady metallic song. What kind of illness is cured by the thing that defines it? The trial was not held in a court of law. It was held in the physician's office, week after week. The condition was stated openly, though never in such blunt terms. Comply and be called stable. Suffer the clinical touch, the cold brass of the manipulator, or the physician's own hand, and be allowed to return home. Resist, call it what it was, or fail to release. and be marked as intractable. The prescription was clear: participate in your own subjugation. The alternative was the rest cure, the gray wards of the sanatorium, or the surgical removal of the womb itself, the final act of erasure. The pressure began softly. The doctor's paternal disappointment, the husband's frustration, the gentle suggestions that her nervousness was upsetting the household. Then came the deprivation, removal from society, forced bed rest in a darkened room for weeks, fed only milk and broth. No books, no letters, no stimulation, only the cold weight of the diagnosis pressing down. Then, the silence. The physician no longer listened to her words. He listened only to her body's response, transcribed in his ledger. The patient, too, fell silent. What was there to say? Her refusal was not a shout. It was a cold line, drawn inside her own mind. She would not speak. She would not react. She would endure the thrumming of the machine. This was the inversion. The cure was meant to break the tension, to force a physical confession of the sickness. But the hysterical paroxysm, when delivered by a cold hand or a steam-powered device, became something else. It was not pleasure, it was not relief. It was a mechanical function, a debt paid. It became armor. The patient learned to sever her mind from the leather chaise. The physicians noted with clinical approval that the paroxysm was achieved, but they failed to see the person retreating, finding a cold, hard place inside where the treatment could not reach. Why did this happen? Why was this the treatment? Here, the core of the story is unsealed. The Victorian medical world could not, or would not, see a woman's mind as separate from her biology. They saw her as a creature of the womb. They believed her intellect, her desires, and her anxieties were governed by a hydraulic system of nervous energy that, if blocked, turned toxic. They did not believe women had orgasms for pleasure. They believed the paroxysm was a purely functional, mechanical release valve. It was not medicine, it was engineering. If a woman was anxious, she was not worried about her finances, her confinement, or her lack of rights. She was, in their ledgers, simply congested. The physician, with his machine, was merely clearing the pipes. This is why the machine was invented. A physician in the 1880s, Dr. Joseph Mortimer Granville, patented the first electromechanical vibrator. He intended it as a labor-saving device for doctors whose hands grew tired from the tedious work of manual massage. The price, hinted at before, is now paid in full. It was not money. It was not submission. The price was the woman's self. To be cured, she had to accept that her personality, her anger, her intellect, her sadness was not her. It was a disease. She had to agree to be hollowed out, leaving only a functioning, compliant biological machine. The treatment did not cure the illness. It taught it. It taught the patient that her body and herself were at war. And the physicians kept their notes, written in cold, black ink, never realizing what they were truly building. They were not building a cure. They were documenting a failure. What power is found in a thing that is mislabeled? The machine of brass and ivory is gone, rusted or sold for scrap. The leather chaise is torn and discarded. The physician's ledgers, with their cold black ink, are filed away. But something else remains. In an archive, or perhaps a forgotten attic trunk, beneath folded linen smelling of lavender and dust, lies a different record. Here is the evidence. It is not an official file. It is a small, velvet-covered diary, its lock broken. The paper is thin, the ink faded to brown. This is the hidden sign, the counter-narrative to the physician's ledger. A researcher, or perhaps a descendant, opens the cover. This is the wordless rite of memory. The hand, warm with life, touches the cold, brittle page. A silent, centuries-late witness. The physician's ledger, stored in the official archive, notes a date in 1889. Patient B, presented with high nervousness, weeping, pelvic massage administered, hysterical paroxysm achieved after 11 minutes. Patient calm, dismissed. The velvet diary, dated the same day, tells the hidden truth. The doctor today, the machine. He calls it the manipulator. It hums like a bee in a jar. He watched my face. I closed my eyes and thought of the grocery list. Potatoes, wax, black thread. When it was done, he smiled. He said I was much improved. He will allow me to have tea in the garden tomorrow. The entries continue, page after page. They are not the rants of a hysteric. They are the cold, clear-eyed observations of a prisoner. How does a sane person document an insane world? The diary does not speak of nervous energy or wombish vapors. It speaks of the price. It details the calculations of compliance. This was the hidden truth. The women were not mad. They were managing. They were trapped in a system that had labeled their intellect, their grief, and their frustration as a disease. The only way to navigate that system was to perform the role they were given. The paroxysm was not a cure. It was not a release. It was currency. It was a mechanical function performed in exchange for small freedoms. The freedom to walk in the garden, the freedom to read a book, the freedom to see one's own children. The women learned to dissociate, to retreat to that cold, hard place inside, and give the physician the symptom he required. The machine of brass and ivory did not cure hysteria. It simply taught sane women how to simulate the cure. The ledgers recorded a medical success. The diaries recorded a survival strategy. The illness was not in the patient. It was in the cold eye of the observer. The final entry is short, the ink slightly blurred. He says, I am cured. I am allowed to go home. But the diary is not finished. After that last entry on the final page, a single line is added, as if in different ink months later. What is a cure that costs you the truth? The erasure is not violent. It is administrative. In the physician's ledgers, the entries for the cured patients simply stop. The black ink moves on to new names, new cases of hysteria. The women who paid the price, who learned to perform the cure, are dismissed. Their stories vanish from the official record. Their cure was the end of the file. Their silence was recorded as success. The institution had no interest in the life that came after, the cold, hard place the patient had built inside herself. The machine had hummed. The paroxysm was achieved. The case was closed. The distant witnesses remain. They are not in the medical archives. They are the velvet-covered diaries in attic trunks. They are the whispers in family histories, the difficult great-aunt, the nervous grandmother who spent a season in a sanatorium and never spoke of it. These whispers are not proof. They are just echoes, easily dismissed as fiction, as the very hysteria they sought to describe. The official record, bound in leather and smelling of wax, contradicts them with the full weight of scientific authority. And so, the opening image returns. Sound, the distant faint echo of a steady mechanical thrumming. The sound of the brass and ivory machine. It is no longer in the cold consulting room. It is an echo, a vibration left in the stone. It was never the sound of a cure. It was the sound of a diagnosis. It was the sound of a system building a cage of cold authority, and then building a mechanical key to turn the lock. It was the sound of medicine mistaking compliance for health and silence for peace. Subscribe, hit the bell, and like. The machine is gone, but the diagnosis remains.